How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Is It Worth It? My name is Jeremiah.
I'm Luke.
And today we're going to be talking about We Happy Few and deciding, is it worth it?
Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so we're just going to hit our
Per
categories.
usual, we're going to hit the categories, the 5 categories for our gaming reviews first, give our initial rating, and then we'll go in depth with what we did or didn't like in those specific areas. So just off the first category, writing, story, and lore. One of the most important parts of any game.
It's a slow burn, and it's disappointing. Honestly, that's my initial thoughts.
Slow burn and disappointing.
Mm-hmm. It's a slow burn at first. You think it's going to go somewhere because it's written like an Agatha Christie novel. If you've watched Murder on the Nile or Murder on the Orient Express, you kind of have an idea of what we're talking about, where they set up a lot of things early on. They give you a lot of context for why the world is the way that it is. They give you some motivations. And then ultimately, at least I felt like, at the very end of Arthur's story, which is the main character, there's 3 narrative arcs in this
Try
game.
not to do with too much spoilers just yet.
Well, that's not too much of a spoiler, though. You could find that out without giving away too much. There's just 3 narratives. I don't say who it is. Anyway, 3 narratives. First one, Arthur being the most prolific of the 3. It's the character you start out playing as. Yeah. It's a slow burn, and it's ultimately disappointing. That was my takeaway from the writing.
Yeah, it was definitely a slow burn. I found the world building more interesting.
Yeah,
the further I went into it, where I liked what they were doing with a lot of the lore and world that they had created in this post-World War II UK. It's at, 1965?
Yeah.
I think around there. It's 1960s, mid to late
1960s.
1960s. UK is when it's set. Yeah. And it's an interesting take on it. So
definitely not something that I was expecting. I had no idea what to expect going into this game.
Neither did I. I had zero knowledge of anything about it.
Knew it was a PC game that got ported to consoles because it turned out to be really popular. I knew it was an indie development game.
Yep.
That shows. It does. Even as a console.
It was I think a Kickstarter-backed game for a lot of the funding for it. I think it was developed by Compulsion Games.
Which isn't any shade against them. I mean, they made a great game.
No, they did a good job.
The gameplay works really well. Mechanics are solid. Crafting works. There's a reason to craft in this game. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about. But yeah, for writing, I'd give it a 6, honestly.
We're rating out of 20.
Out of 20. Okay, 16. 16.
Yeah, 6.
It's rough. At the very end, it takes a dive, and it just is very unsatisfying how it ends.
Yeah, I can go 16 with you. I think that's a fair. Yeah.
It was an unsatisfying slow burn, and it really felt like it was building something great. And then we'll talk about it in spoilers, but it was just it didn't satisfy at all. It felt like there needed to be something more.
All right. Moving on to world and character design.
Lots and lots and lots of recycled NPCs. My goodness. I don't know if that's intentional.
Well, it's something that when you have a vastly populated game like this, where it is vastly populated, there are NPCs everywhere. You just have to reuse certain models.
Direct one-for-ones? Felt like an alpha build. The little old ladies, they're direct carbon copies. They don't even change the colors. The hats don't change. If you're going to use the same
probably because
NPC,
they probably didn't have the time or resources, given that it was a Kickstarter indie game,
to
actually develop a character randomizer where you can get a base model and just randomize outfits and certain facial features.
But you'd think, though, it's the game
a lot of games end up doing that way. Things don't feel quite so cookie cutter, but if you just don't have the ability to do that, then you just don't have the ability to do that. Yeah, it is very noticeable. There's a handful of models in the game, and they're just on repeat, and it feels like it. That being said, the designs that they actually have, the overall aesthetic of the world,
it totally worked.
Yeah, definitely works, and is very consistent all the way through.
Kind of a BioWare-y animated feel. It was really believable.
Yeah,
nice 60s vibe to the whole thing.
Very BioWare influenced in the gameplay and aesthetic.
For sure. Which isn't to say that this has anything in common with the BioWare series.
No,
it totally does not.
Aesthetically, it has a similar look and feel
to
it and how it plays. But I think they definitely had a vision, what they were going for the overall look and tone of the look of the game. and it was consistent all the way throughout, and actually does a good job switching between certain aspects, whether you're on drugs or not.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That actually changed kind of the environment and how you view it very seamlessly.
And that's not too much of a spoiler.
I guess that's more the graphic side of things.
Yeah.
But like the design of it is very consistent and very good.
The whole game is predicated on basically this drug called Joy. Like that's just straight up in the front. In the front, like title card, you can see that in the commercials for the game. So we're not getting anything away there. This game's like 3 or 4 years old at this point. It's
it came out in 2016.
6
years old.
Shoot, 6 years old. Okay,
yeah.
We played it on Games Pass because it was free.
Yep.
And I remember that a lot of the guys in our circle that we game with were all pretty hot on this game when it first came out. Mix of PC players and PlayStation, and I remember them talking about it, and then it just kind of fizzled out. And so that's why I decided, maybe we should take a look at this. I think there's a reason why it didn't get more press. I think it was just kind of, it is what it is. But it has a vision. It definitely has a vision, and it does what it sets out to do. I just don't know that I like what they set out to do.
That's fair. World and character design, I'm going to go like 17 on it.
7, fine. All right, that's fair. I mean, it definitely achieves the vibe of, the English hamlets. The countryside looks very good. The graphic fidelity is there. Everything works. It's just kind of lackluster, I think, at the end.
Yeah, 17. I think that's good. That's fair. All right, gameplay, mechanics, and functionality. Just how the game actually works. Does it work well? Go for it.
For a game that doesn't predicate itself on combat, I think they did a really good job of making combat not the purpose and point of the game. Like, it was actually kind of refreshing to find and play a game that didn't primarily rest its laurels on kill the thing to get to the next level. It was more of a narrative, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. You're not necessarily in it to
Sure,
do
it is
anything.
much more a story-driven game than like a gameplay-driven game.
Like, there is combat, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, there is combat.
It's more of like an afterthought
and
than a direct...
You're right, it doesn't require you to use combat until it does, and there are portions of this game where you have to use it.
That's
which
true.
Can be frustrating when you've played the game not supposed to be using it,
and then all of a sudden you get thrown into an instance.
Where
I can
you
think
have
of
to
one
use it.
in this archive scenario.
Yeah, where you get thrown into it and you just have to. I got to the point where it's like I just murdered everybody.
Yeah, you kind of just lose the will to try, I think, after that
point.
Where you're just
you can be all sneaky, and this isn't like giving away too much. Like, it's just like a sneaky game. But if you don't want to be, then you can just kill people.
Right, and Dishonored is a game that gives you a real choice between lethal and non-lethal options. We Happy Few can't decide if it wants to be a simulator, or if it wants to be an RPG. Because when it does require you to do combat, you have to do combat.
Yeah, you do.
And then when you're trying to just basically play the story, you don't have to do anything other than just go talk to people and walk around. That's about it. Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of loses its vision in that sense.
I encountered a couple very unfortunate bugs when I was playing.
Did you? I ran into a couple as well.
Some of the combat mechanics and some of the minor things that happen, where it's just annoying, and it happened multiple times. It wasn't just like a one-off. Okay, I have the same thing happen multiple times, and I was only able to fix it once. So you end up kind of losing some of your progress if you don't save often. Which, like, you should save often anyway. But even if been playing for an hour or whatever, and then something happens and you have to reload the save, like, it just sucks.
I had it crash a few times on me, just fatal crash, and the game just shut down.
I had a few mishaps like that where it's like, I just don't. Yeah, it didn't work quite as well. A lot of the mechanics as I think they were supposed to, and even when everything is working, it's, in my opinion, serviceable at best when it comes to like the sneaking and the takedown mechanics and the combat and stuff, where when it works it feels okay. Like, never feels good.
That's a good point.
It only ever feels okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Until you get some of the more like random drops that are like the super weapons that you can just one shot the like doctors with.
Sure.
And then at that point combat is more superfluous. It's not really even, there's really no point to it at that point. I mean, you spend this entire game avoiding certain things, then all of a sudden you can just one shot. The game can't really figure out what it wants to do, and I think that's just, if it would have had a little bit more polish, a little bit more time in the oven, maybe we would have seen something a little different. But it's okay. It's serviceable. That's a great way of putting it. I'd say as far as like gameplay, it's like 15.
I was going to go 13.
13?
Just because of some of the mechanics that
I'm being a little generous. Yeah, I'm being a little generous. 13's pretty fair.
Okay, let's go 13.
I start at 20 and I come down. He starts at 0 and comes up. So
yeah,
that's
at least in the middle.
Going.
So for 1 through 20, I start at 10 and go up or down.
That's fair.
Where it's like, none of it was necessarily like, it wasn't completely awful. Like at certain points, like it was just a couple things that bring it down from being serviceable.
Yeah, this isn't like Sid Meier's Pirates from. Shoot, that was like 2003 or something.
Don't you dare speak ill of Sid Meier's Pirates from the early 2000s.
God, that game was so hard to play. That game was horrible. It was so awful.
And I beat it several times.
It was so hard to play, though. It was awful. But anyway,
you get like the cutlass duels.
Yeah,
and it's like all just the arrow keys that you're.
Yep.
Like for all your parries and like if they're swinging high, you have to duck. If swinging low, you have to jump.
Or the Obi-Wan game for the original Xbox because. The thumbstick apparently was a great idea
else to move played Sid Meier's Pirates.
Really?
No.
That game was awful.
It was so much fun.
Awful. If you could get over the mechanics of how buggy the just gameplay was.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough. But like, yeah. I haven't thought about that game in a long time.
Yeah, let's never think about it again. Let's just leave it there.
Okay, moving on. This is a little side tangent. Graphics.
Actually, it looked like a good game. I liked the fog effects. I liked the lighting. And when you're on the drugs, it looks really good. The world looks really good.
Yeah.
The music, too, which that's not really a part of it. But
we'll get to that.
The colors, the desaturation when you have withdrawal symptoms works. For a game that relies on recycled assets as much as this game does, it really shines in what they put a lot of effort into, which clearly was the graphics themselves. And they look good. They do. They look clean.
And the way the graphics, like you said, change kind of seamlessly between whether you're on the Joy or like having withdrawals and the different drugs that you use throughout the game. Like it all shifts your perspective and how you view the world around you, which is cool. And it's all very seamless throughout the game itself. So it kind of goes in with their kind of general, I guess, style for the game.
Yeah.
The graphics work very well
and I guess
for what they decided to do.
And I guess you could say, too, that 1960s Britain and really 1960s everywhere was really boring and really carbon copy, except for things like muscle cars and the music scene. The 60s were kind of a sedentary time. I mean, that's the whole point of the like hippie revolution was just trying to like get out of this like carbon copy, do what your mom and dad did because that's what their parents did. It was just like this very lived-in world that everything looked the same. It was just suburban house living in the United States. The same way in Britain where everything was kind of, bland milk toast just, 20 years after the Great War, the Second Great War, and everyone's just kind of doing what they do. And that makes sense and it works for this game. So I can't really talk too badly about the recycled assets because I think that might have been kind of what they were going for.
I think it was more of a necessity.
I think that too.
Than what they were.
I'm trying to give them a little bit of kudos for that, just a little bit. But I think he's right. I think it's just lack of time.
But the graphics themselves, I think they're not outstanding. They service what they're going for very well,
and they work. And it
does play to the tone of the game.
That's the point I was going to make. Is that it makes a worn out approach. You get to another village, and it's the same thing. You get to another NPC, and it's the same thing.
Which is kind of the point.
Yes, but then once you take the drugs, or don't take the drugs, it changes how that approach functions. Mm-hmm. And I think that lends itself to being really the only saving grace of the gameplay, is just the graphics look decent, and the drugs make the color saturation work.
All right, so what's your number for decent graphics?
Decent graphics, 14.
Yeah, I can meet you there. I think
like
that's
14.
Fine. 14 sounds good.
Not amazing.
Again,
not 10, the worst thing I've ever seen.
10 either. Would be like average, like middle of the road baseline kind of thing. So it's like it's still above, like it's not bad.
No.
Below 10 is bad. Above 10 is like it's good. It's just not like
no. This isn't.
It's not good. Not great.
There's lots of things we can compare it to. It's not that bad. Not that bad at all. And for a free game, it looks good. So
yeah, if you have Games Pass, you can play it for free. But okay, last category: audio mixing, sound design. and music. Like
I liked it.
All of that.
It was good. Music was really cool. I liked the elevator music theme they've got running through the entirety of the game, especially when you're on the drugs. It worked, and it was very 60s, English feel to it. It worked. That's really all I got to say about that. Like, there's not a whole lot else about this game that's all that prolific. There's no real crazy sound effects because you're not doing anything all that crazy.
Yeah.
Other than walking and sitting down.
The sound design itself is just fine. The audio mixing is actually pretty good for an indie game like it is, especially when it comes to the surround sound feel of a lot of the audio that is in the game, and a lot of directional audio that they have for the voices and proximity.
Yeah, that does work really well.
So all that's actually done really well. So I enjoyed the audio mixing side of it. I wasn't too keen on the music as much as you were. It was noticeable. It was cool. I think it was most pronounced during when you're on the drugs.
Yeah,
is when you notice it the most, because I think you're supposed to.
That's the point. Yeah.
So I think it did its job. It was serviceable. Nothing outstanding, but fine. Not bad.
Nope, it's just
like a lot of this game. It's not bad. Yeah, I think I'm probably gonna go about the same for the audio mixing and sound design. 'Cause I think the actual audio mixing was better than the music.
Agreed.
And the sound design, so it kind of has to meet in the middle. Because I would say the audio mixing is like a 16, but the sound design is probably like a 12. So kind of like 14 again.
Yeah, it's a 14 for sure. Only real redeeming grace about the sound design for me was the music, and like Jeremiah said, that lasts for about 60 seconds while you're on the drugs, and then it goes away. And it gets repetitive. It's the same soundtrack every time.
It's a fairly high score, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, the game is not terrible, but
yeah,
it's a slow burn to nothing. It's like a firework that doesn't go off.
It's a fairly high score for, our final score, after going through all 5 categories, is 74.
Yeah, that's about exactly what I would have pegged it for. The best example I can have is that it's like a nice, keg of fireworks you got. You're setting it off for your grand finale. You watch the fuse burn, and then 2 go off, and you just don't get the rest out of it, and you're kind of disappointed. That's kind of where I was at with it, and we'll talk more about the reasons why I felt that way in spoilers. But just as a baseline, 74. I'm totally content with that.
74. So it's would I recommend? No, but if you're interested in playing it,
go ahead,
go for it. If there's anything appealing about it, from watching, hearing us talk about it so far, or watching any of the trailers or anything for the game, if you haven't played it and hey, that looks interesting, then if you're interested in play it because you can have a good time playing it.
It's a 6-year-old game, so you can pick this thing up for free. Yeah. I mean, if you get lucky and you can find it a bargain bin at your local GameStop or something, and it can't be more than $6. So at that price, you can't really complain too much. Look for it on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. Don't pay more than $15.
If you have Games Pass, you can play it for free.
Yeah, do that too. That's what we did.
A lot of what we do.
That's what we did.
All right, so now we're going to get into spoilers, which is just going to be we're not going to go in order throughout the whole game.
Just talk about
hit some of the highs and lows about the game and what really kind of sold it or broke it for us.
Yeah.
Spoilers from here on out. Going back to combat, getting stuck in combat mode and unable. That was what happened to me several times.
Me too.
Was you're sneaking about specifically at night.
Yep.
And one of the bobbies see you is okay, oh no, run away. So you run away, you duck into an alley, you hide in the trash can or whatever. And then your fists are still
up and you can't get out of this mode.
And then you run into an alley and you crouch, and your hands are like this when you crouch. And you stand up.
And you can't put them
away.
Your
fists are still up, but nobody's chasing you, and there's no way to engage or disengage your
and it's an immediate red flag where everybody will just immediately start attacking you if
anybody
you
sees you with your fist. So at that point it's just you're stuck in combat mode and you can't get out of it. The only way you can get out of it, which does not always work, is to actually just do it again. You go up there, punch somebody, get into a fight, start chasing you so you can run away and then see if it exits you from combat mode.
Yeah.
One time it did, the other time it didn't, and that's when I had to just load a different save.
That happened to me twice.
And lose, same. I think it did happen 3 times.
So another
and
really...
it was just frustrating where it's why?
Bad proximity sensing, bad AI. So... The other thing that broke it for me was actually when you go to the the soldiers' camp, and you find out that all of the tanks are paper mache.
That was funny.
That was, yeah. And a little bit, that was kind of where I was like, oh, maybe they're going to do something cool with this, like a conspiracy theory or something. You're going to get to the highest level of government. No.
But they never talked about that again.
No, they just kind of let that one go completely.
That one thing, which seems very substantial, but is limited to just that area. You never talk about it.
Never again. Yeah, and that was kind of a letdown for me, but I'll let it slide. So there was a glitch where you're trying to sneak around in this guard camp, and there's tons of these ex-soldiers everywhere.
Yeah.
Everyone's carrying guns with no bullets, apparently. They just stab people with the bayonets. Yeah. So I was kind of frustrated with that because...
Well, I find it funny, and the way it came across to me is that they're trying to like still have the appearance of like the military and the army. So it's like everybody still has to carry guns, but there's no bullets because they just literally don't have any bullets. So you carry the guns for the intimidation factor of having a gun, but then you just have to stab people with a bayonet. I thought it was funny.
So there's that. Anyway, so I was sneaking through this tall grass, which is kind of like any typical game where you hide in the tall grass, you disappear from enemies.
Yep.
Not that revolutionary. So what happened for me was that I got stuck on the side of one of the tanks and I could not move. And the game was in a perpetual state of alert. So the alarms kept going off, they kept looking for me, and they couldn't see me because I'd actually glitched through the side of the tank just by crouching next to it. And the models like merged, so the AI knew I was there but couldn't like physically see me, so they couldn't attack me.
They were always on alert, but they could never lose interest.
And I couldn't move. I was stuck there, and I like sat there for like 30 minutes trying to get unstuck, and I was this close to reloading a save, which would have put me all the way back at the beginning, which super frustrating thing about this game is that the only way to fast travel is between these like tunnel exit points.
I actually don't mind the fast travel mechanic in this game.
That didn't bother me.
It took me a while to get it down, like what are they going for? But then once you get it, where it's like there's just a hub in every area of the game, and it makes it really simple. Like
running sucks in this game though. Like the fatigue is awful. Like I get that they're trying to go for a real world thing, but seriously, it's a video game.
I didn't notice it that much when running because I didn't run.
I ran everywhere.
I didn't run from things. Like I legit would stand there and kill 6 people.
Yeah, see, I was
not a run and hide type, except for like very specific scenarios. But for most part, if like somebody saw me, I would just beat them with a pipe.
Bro.
Yeah, I'll just pull out my lead pipe and just like beat them to death real quick, and then hide them in a trash can in the alley. Like that was kind of my mode throughout most of this game.
I lost interest in the combat. I genuinely did. I just didn't care, and I just was like, okay, I'm just gonna play it to get through the story, see if there's any redeeming qualities there. So I was just running away constantly. Sure. And I found that there was like the perfect trifecta of like food, water, and occasionally like a random boost stat from like honey or something. Mm-hmm. And you'd be able to run for like 2 seconds longer. It was really frustrating though how slow getting from one place to another was. And I think they do that intentionally, but it didn't work. Did not work for me at all. Really frustrating, especially in the later portions of the game, where you are in a much bigger city, much bigger environment, and so there's much more backtracking. Right. There's so much running, and just trying to like get to a bench to get away from the bobbies just so that I could get out of combat, to go back to an area I was just in to try to, initiate a dialogue with this, whatever I was trying to do.
I played it a little more differently, where I didn't play it straight through. What I mean by that is there's a day and night cycle in the game, and you can just keep on playing all the way through. I intentionally slept in bunkers during the night, so I didn't have to worry about being out at night past curfew.
See, I got the perk where they would ignore me at nighttime.
Okay, like that's I don't think I ever got that far in the perks.
Oh, I got them all, and the only one worth getting is the you can stay out after curfew perk, and the you can carry more stuff perk.
And you got to take down bobbies. You got to be able to take down.
Oh, bobbies. That too. The only 3, and the one for the doctors too. Once you can take the doctors and the bobbies count the same thing. So like 3 perks, that's it. But you have to like get through a whole slog of them to get to those 3.
Some of them are useful, like the extra health kind of thing, and
sure, if you're going to be getting into combat more frequently. But if you play it like I did, where you're just kind of just in it for the story alone, those aren't going to help at all.
Yeah, for as little emphasis as the game puts on combat, like half your skills are combat oriented.
Right.
Which, again, kind of
entire game is melee, by the way.
Made sense for me.
The entire game is melee.
I did.
There are no range attacks other than throwing rocks and
you can
darts.
throw rocks, you can throw darts, you can throw pebbles, you can throw bottles, and you can throw grenades.
Oh yeah, that's right. There are the like exploding grenades that make people vomit, or the
vomit grenades. You have
just
stun grenades. You have electronic, like electro grenades and stuff. There's some, a fair bit of variety. By that I mean like 5 different options.
Yeah, it was just kind of, I lost interest in that. The only thing I was playing it for was the story, and I'll talk about my biggest aggravation is at the end of the game, the biggest reveal is that, as Arthur, you're playing his character trying to figure out, trying to get back to your brother who got on a train with all the other children and went to Germany for some arbitrary reason that they never tell you. All these kids went to Germany for some reason.
Yeah, they were basically deporting the youth.
Yeah, they just
some
took
form
all
of population
the young people.
control is how I took it.
I would assume so as well. Maybe it was
never
like
clarifies,
prevent,
but you can read into it what you will.
Yeah, it's very ambiguous. It could be for like population control. It could be for some like experimentation. It could have been for usually you want to make sure that the next coming generation is not going to have like some reason to like go to war with you for whatever happened to the older generation, which happens. It doesn't tell you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the end doesn't justify any of those explanations. You basically, as Arthur, get to a point where you realize that you basically lied, abandoned your, what I assume to be, he's autistic, I think.
Yeah.
He has, like some form of like severe autism.
Yeah, Percy is on the spectrum somehow. Never clarifies, but it makes it obvious throughout
that
a lot of the backstory you get throughout it that Arthur is kind of the one that has to take care of Percy a lot of the time.
Right.
Because mentally he's just not as a kid.
Social cues go over his head.
Yeah.
He's really, really gifted at things like chess, and it's very clear that he's autistic. Mm-hmm. And then you find out that your character, Arthur, abandoned him, lied about being him in order to trade places with him because he did not want to go to Germany, and the entire time he's been telling himself that the reason that he didn't get on the train was because like they made a mistake and he was trying to go with his brother, but
the guards wouldn't let him.
The guards wouldn't let him. Yeah. And the reality is that he basically lied his butt off to not get on the train, and the whole like meta of the game is that people are basically lying to themselves to forget how awful things are. It's not really like there's no conspiracy or like deeper story. It's just that simple. It's just things suck and people are taking drugs to get through it. That's it. And like the meta of the meta line that you see all the time is like a country with no history is a
happy is the
nation.
country with no past.
Thank you. That's it. And sure, I thought they were going to do something with that. Like, I thought they were going to go into, like, some sort of, like, mass mind control. Or, like, maybe you'd find out that, like, the island that they're all on is, like, the last bastion of civilization. No, nothing like that.
They go into it a little bit, not nearly as in-depth as maybe you would have liked, with is the Coconut Joy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the new flavor that's making people go crazy.
Right, which is basically, like, they've discovered the problems that things have, and they're based joy, which is the drug they have just to make everybody happy and keep everybody kind of sedated to some extent and a part of normal society, so you don't have any thoughts that are out of the norm. You don't behave in a way that is outside the norm. You just adhere to all of society.
Very Orwellian. Everybody conforms to the state. Big Brother is watching you. Very, very.
And joy kind of keeps you in this more submissive state,
right?
And
they will like excise you from civilization, like kick you out to where the people with the plague and everything else goes. Like you would just get straight up, if you don't get straight up murdered.
Society, if you're someone that doesn't take your joy, and they call you a downer.
Yeah.
But there's this new flavor of joy, the coconut. I think it is flavor of joy, which basically their menu is like killing people.
Yeah.
But then, as you find out, when you actually infiltrate the factory that is making the joy, is that it's intentional. Like, because they know the faults in the system, their plan is to essentially kill everybody and start over.
I think that, I didn't really get that too much, but when you talk to the doctor that's at the top,
it's very
I thought you were going to run into him again, because he totally gets away, and then you never see him again.
Yeah.
He just dips, and that's it. You never see him again.
To be fair, we both played through Arthur Hastings' story.
Yes.
And we both started Molly's.
Yeah.
Story. That's her name, right?
Yes, I believe so. We were both done at that point, though.
Like, yeah, we had kind of checked out of the story and the world by the time we finished Arthur's story, which, again, the world building, I liked what they were doing. I liked a lot of the backstory.
It's not engaging enough for a second playthrough.
The gameplay is not engaging enough to continue on, and the story is unfortunately not enough to make me want to slog through it again.
And I looked into, kind of, just for context, how long it takes to finish hers, and it's in like another 10 hours.
Is it?
Yeah. And they give you a ton of handicaps that you didn't get with Arthur. And typically it's the opposite of that, where you start with handicaps and they take those away with a second playthrough to make it more engaging for you to do that.
Mm-hmm. Which works backwards. Works in the context of the story to some extent, but also feels like it's
arbitrary.
There to artificially inflate the game.
Yeah, it's like it's like welcome to
it feels like
difficulty 2.0 because reasons.
Like it's written in a way where it makes sense in the story.
Yeah, that's true.
With her, with Sally, not Molly. Sally is her name.
Thank you.
You have a newborn at home that you have to continually go back and check in on and feed and like change her nappy and like take care of a child. Like, okay, that makes sense. Like from the tourist story perspective, it all makes sense.
But the amount that you can carry being just like handicapped so
unnecessarily, just the gameplay becomes unfun.
Yeah, and you're a potato when it comes to like how many hits you can take. Like,
and it's similar to playing just a different class,
I guess. But it felt
like because there's no actual skills and abilities that really differ.
Other
like your abilities are
you're
a chemist,
potions.
So you have to make different potions and chemical stuff.
And you just have to make a bunch of stuff to be able to sell it, to buy the stuff that Arthur could make. And they give you a reason for that. They say that, she is a brilliant genius chemist and she's just sucks at anything else.
So it changes the gameplay and some of the mechanics on you, but without actually changing anything.
And everything, the entirety of the world is exactly the same. No differences. You're in the same places.
Which makes sense, because you're playing through the same time period just as a different person.
Right, but like, on the flip side, the only other game that I've done this with where you get the exact same environment, but the gameplay is worth it to do a second time through with a different character is Resident Evil 2, the remaster. In Resident Evil 2, you can play through as Leon or as... I cannot remember the name of the girl. Claire. Claire Redfield, who's a sister of one of the protagonists from the first game. Anyway, we're not talking about Resident Evil. But basically, you go through the entire police department as either one of two characters, and there are different things that only one of them has access to, and the other one will not. And you will never be able to get those things as the other person. It's just impossible. So there's a reason to play it as two different people. And the story is different. You meet different people, you have a different end goal, and then eventually it's like two big circles that meet at the very end. Brilliantly done, very well written, great game, go play it. This game doesn't do that. It's just
it is similar to that. It's just not executed as well.
They tried to do that because they saw that more successful games have done that, and it just flopped. And maybe it flopped because I was checked out. I didn't care. I was done. I was so let down with how Arthur's story ends, and we can talk about that for just a minute. You basically get to the train yard, this mythic place that apparently is going to take you to where, your brother Percy is.
Well, he thinks that.
Right. Well, you as the character, you have nothing else to go on, so that's what you think it is the entire time. Anyway, You get to this train station. There is a train. It's not moving. And there's, like, no conspiracy. It's just, you just get there. And it's like an abandoned checkpoint when no one's waiting. And there's just a random dude, just a random Bobby there for no reason that you ran into one other time in the story.
Well, he's the guard he's the one guard that's guarding the train.
Right, but he's the one Bobby that is not like the others. And you ran into him in another point in the story, and he recognizes you as in the archives, I believe. Doesn't say anything. You just see him, he gives you this lecture about something, and then poof, gone, magically. Right. And I thought it was a figment of Arthur's imagination. And then you run into the guy, and I'm like, what is he, tripping on something you don't know this entire time? Nope. He's just there, chilling by the train. And then when you talk to him, you get this lecture about life, essentially. And then they just go walking off towards the other side of the tunnel. And I was like, that's it? Really? That's it?
Other side of the bridge, there's a tunnel. But, yeah, the way Arthur's story ultimately ends is once you make it to the train yard, ultimately you get to decide whether you want to leave Wellington Wells and try and find Percy, or you can basically go back on the Joy and just reinsert yourself into life. And the ending story part, I actually really like. I like what they did. I know we disagree on this a little bit.
Where they go back to Arthur, and you can take the Oblivion to basically forget everything and go back to
revealing Arthur's past as you go. Where, like you said earlier, you find out at the end that Arthur has been lying to himself the whole time, and it wasn't the guards that didn't let him go on the train. He actually switched the passports, lied because he didn't want to go, and has now convinced himself otherwise, and is basically living with survivor's guilt because he left his brother and sent him off
pretended to be
on his own.
his autistic brother. Dick move.
Yeah.
Really, dick move.
And so I like that the choice at the end is Arthur deciding, doesn't have anything to do with finding Percy for me.
Nothing, yeah.
And I didn't mind that because the ending was all about whether or not Arthur forgives himself. Whether or not he can forgive himself for what he did to Percy, sending him off to Germany alone, intentionally. Whether he can forgive himself for having done that and actually go and try and find his brother and make things right, or is he too far gone to the point where he just wants to forget it again? Remembered all the horrible things that he's actually done and everything he's done up to get to that point now. Is it worth continuing on, or do you just want to forget and go back to a normal life? And that's the decision. That's how I read it.
I felt like
that's the decision the player gets to make.
It honestly, it felt like a BBC drama the entire time. It legitimately, it was just this introspective quest for, this absolvance of your personal guilt over something. But the problem with that is not that those are bad things. It's that it's a video game. And what's the point and purpose of a video game? It's to overcome challenges. It's to artificially interject yourself into a place, position, time, or character that is either fictional or non, to present yourself with challenges to best. This is why we love the games that are the most difficult. And as a group, as a culture, gamers are attracted largely to the games that are the most challenging. Think about Dark Souls or Bloodborne or Elden Ring, I think, is the newest one. People rave about those games. Not for me. I've tried them. I don't enjoy being tortured for sucking at a video game. But the point that they are trying to make with that is that it's giving you a difficulty that is so extra that you get that rush of accomplishment. We all know what that feels like when you do the thing. And so when I got to the end of Arthur's story, there was just nothing. And I was like, really? A life lesson about forgiving yourself? Well, that's bullcrap. That's a really lame excuse for a payoff for a 20+ hour playthrough. I just felt cheated, honestly. I was like, and then Jeremiah was talking to me and we was like, yeah, we should really go through the other two. And we're like,
I finished Arthur and I told him, I was like, I don't know if I want to talk about the game without completing Sally
the other two.
And Ollie's playthroughs. So I have the full story. And then I played Sally for 2 hours and then I texted him again. It's like, you know what? Let's not even bother.
Yeah, we were both done. Completely checked out. We're just done. And I think that's the problem, is this game just doesn't give you an incentive to keep going.
Like I've said before, you either have to have one of two things. Really engaging gameplay or a really interesting story.
Yeah, one of the two.
You can lack in one of those areas if the other makes up for it in a big way.
100% agree.
Gameplay and story are both just kind of right here. That's about it.
It's like overcooked rice.
It's just neither one is good enough, at least for me, to keep me engaged enough. The story wasn't interesting enough to overcome the bad gameplay.
Yep.
Of just the game as a whole, to go through it again, to not really, you're experiencing new stories, sure, because you're playing a different character with different interaction with different people. It is different, but not enough.
No.
To make it worth it for me. It wasn't anyway.
Nope. It was like overcooked rice, essentially. It's palatable, it ain't gonna taste good, and it's unsatisfying. That's really kind of where I was at with this. That's pretty much all I got.
There, like, we harped a lot on some of the things that the game did poorly. It did some things well.
It's a 75. Like, we didn't rank it, like
74.
a 50.
Yeah.
It's not unplayable. It's just...
Like we said, like, the graphics are all well done. It fits the tone of what the game is going for very well. The music cues are there and noticeable when I think they need to be. The way the graphics shift in and out of whether you're on the Joy or some of the other drugs, like, works, and it makes a noticeable difference visually. That is interesting. And the content, the amount of content that is in the game is good. Like, there's enough in the game to keep you busy for just playing through Arthur. Like, if you want to go through and do all of the side quests and everything, you can play through and do like 30 hours.
That's what I did.
like you can do that, and like there's interesting story bits that happen along the way outside the main narrative.
Right.
So there is a decent amount of content here to actually keep you engaged. If you can stay engaged, if you can find it interesting enough to actually get through.
That's
For
the
me,
million-dollar question.
It wasn't. I did 14 hours. I did the main story, and I didn't really care about much else that was happening. As interesting as it was, it all had really good ideas that were in place that I don't think were executed very well.
I think I had almost 30 hours in it.
Yeah.
Just under, like 26, I think.
Okay.
It's not an enormous game by any means. It's definitely the bulk of the content is in the end game with the second 2 playthroughs, which right around 20 hours there. So you could invest about 40 hours into the game, which the rule that I typically go by is for every $1 you spend on a game, if you get an hour of play out of it, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Can't even get that out of this game. I mean, with the content,
Well,
you're like 40,
we didn't
maybe
buy it,
40
though.
hours. Right, but I'm
We
talking
played it
about
for free.
if you did buy it, which don't buy it.
I don't know what it retails for.
No, don't buy it unless you can get it for an absurdly cheap price.
Like, you can get it for under $10.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah. Or if you have Games Pass, you just want to try it.
It's a time filler.
Like, you could end up enjoying this game. It's not like there's nothing to enjoy about it.
Yeah, if you've got some sort of emulation device or something that can do cloud streaming, and you just want to play a game, download it and play it for like a really long airport visit or something. I don't know. I personally just didn't really see a reason to recommend it to the people that I know, but you may really love it.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe you really enjoy playing games that just have, altruistic life lessons at the end. I just don't care for those types of games.
Generally speaking, I don't enjoy solely story-driven games as much.
That's fair.
For me. Like, just personally. Like, not that I can't enjoy them,
but then sometimes
generally,
you're just waiting
it
for
has to be really good.
It's like get to the end, because the gameplay is usually sacrificed for whatever story element.
Right.
And that usually gets really
sucks.
vexing.
So.
There's very few games that do both perfectly. We're going to be talking about one very soon that does do both perfectly.
Yes.
Yes. But I'd say that's pretty much all I got for We Happy Few.
So, the question, is it worth it? Not is it worth the money, is what it means, but is it worth the time you put into it to actually play it?
I did enjoy my time playing it until the end, and then I felt cheated.
For me, no. I like kind of the same, but I didn't even get to the end. By the time I got to the end, I actually enjoyed more of it kind of retroactively, honestly. But by the time I got to the end, I didn't want to play anymore. Like, was it worth the 14 hours to go through it? For me, is it worth it? No. Like, sorry, just kind of isn't.
All right. Pretty much that's our thoughts on it. I don't think we got anything else. All right, if you enjoyed this video, please let us know. If you didn't enjoy the video, just thank you for sticking around for as long as you did. Leave a comment below. Just let us know your thoughts and if you played through We Happy Few. And stay tuned for next time. We'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, and if you are listening to us on Spotify, you can leave us a rating and follow us as well. That'll really help us out.
Yep, and share it around with your friends if you feel like we are good enough for them to listen to.
All right.
Thanks. We'll catch you on the next one.